If you lie to a king, make sure he isn't real. The words echoed in Lily Carter's mind as the wedding hall fell into a silence so deep it felt like the air itself had stopped breathing. 1 second ago, everything had been noise, voices, footsteps, the heavy sound of a ring box snapping open, and now there was nothing. Just eyes. Dozens of them. All fixed on her. Lily's chest rose too fast, her lungs struggling to keep up as her heart pounded like it was trying to break free. She hadn't planned this. She hadn't thought past the next 5 seconds. All she knew was that if that ring touched her finger, her life wouldn't belong to her anymore. So she had lied. I already have a husband. The words still hung in the air, fragile and dangerous. Then where is he? The man at the altar demanded, his voice tight with irritation. Lily swallowed. Her throat felt dry, like she hadn't had water in days. Don't think. Just act. Her hand lifted, trembling, and pointed into the darkest corner of the room. Him. She didn't even see his face at first. Just a shape. Tall. Still. Watching. And then he moved. It wasn't fast. That was the worst part. It was slow. Deliberate. Like time bent around him instead of the other way around. The shadows seemed to peel back as he stepped forward, revealing a man dressed in black, so precise it looked like it had never known a wrinkle. His features were sharp, almost too perfect, his skin pale in a way that didn't belong to someone who lived under the same sun as everyone else. But it was his eyes that made Lily's stomach drop. They didn't look confused. They didn't look amused. They looked certain. The room reacted before she could. People shifted, backed away. The man at the altar took a single step back without realizing it, his confidence cracking just enough to show fear underneath. No one spoke his name, but they didn't need to. It was written in the way they moved, in the way they avoided looking directly at him. Lily's fingers tightened into fists at her sides. This wasn't right. This wasn't normal. She had picked the wrong person. He stopped 3 feet in front of her, close enough that she could feel the drop in temperature, like standing near an open freezer on a summer day. Up close, he was worse. More real. More dangerous. You, he said quietly. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence like it owned it. Are claiming me as your husband? Lily's breath caught. This was it. This was where he laughed. Where he exposed her. Where everything fell apart. She leaned in, just slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. Please, she said quickly, the words rushing out before fear could stop them. I just need you to pretend. Just for tonight. I won't cause any trouble. I'll disappear after. You won't even remember I exist. For a second, nothing happened. He didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't react the way any normal person would. And then, he stepped closer. Too close. Her back hit the edge of the altar table, nowhere left to go. His gaze dropped briefly to her hand, then back to her face, as if measuring something she couldn't see. Pretend, he repeated, the words slow, deliberate, like he was tasting it. Lily nodded quickly. Yes, that's all. Just pretend. A faint shift passed through his expression. Not quite a smile. Not quite anything human. I don't pretend marriages, he said. The words landed heavy. Final. Lily's stomach dropped. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. She opened her mouth to take it back, to fix it, to undo whatever line she had just crossed. But his hand moved first. He reached for hers, his grip firm, unyielding, like it had already decided she wasn't going anywhere. If I take a wife, he continued, his voice lowering just enough that only she could hear, it becomes real. Something warm sparked against her skin where his fingers touched, subtle at first, like static, then stronger. Her breath hitched as a strange heat spread up her arm, unfamiliar and impossible to ignore. Around them, the room shifted again. People lowered their heads. Some even dropped to one knee. Lily's pulse stuttered. What is happening? She whispered, panic threading through her voice. He leaned in, close enough that she could feel the faint chill of his breath against her ear. You asked for a lie, he murmured. But you chose the one man who cannot give you one. The warmth did not fade. It spread, slow at first, then faster, climbing from Lily's wrist up her arm like something alive, something choosing her. Her breath came uneven, shallow, her fingers twitching in his grasp, as if her body wanted to pull away but could not. Around them, the silence had shifted into something heavier, almost reverent. No one questioned him. No one interrupted. They simply lowered their gaze as if witnessing something sacred and irreversible. Lily's mind raced, searching for logic, for anything that made sense. This was supposed to be a lie. A quick escape. A moment she could disappear from. Not this. Never this. You need to stop, she whispered, her voice barely steady. I did not agree to this. His grip did not tighten, but it did not loosen either. It remained exactly the same, unyielding in a way that felt more certain than force. You spoke the claim, he replied calmly. And I accepted it. The words sent a chill deeper than the cold around him. Accepted. As if this had rules. As if this was something binding beyond her understanding. Lily shook her head quickly, panic rising. That is not how this works. People do not just say things and make them real. For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Not amusement. Something older. In your world, he said, words are often empty. In mine, they are not. The heat in her wrist pulsed again, sharper this time, drawing a quiet gasp from her lips. She looked down before she could stop herself. There, just beneath her skin, a faint pattern shimmered. Gold. Intricate. Moving like it was still forming. Her heart skipped. What is that? She asked, her voice unsteady. He followed her gaze, then lifted his eyes back to hers. Proof, he said simply. The room shifted again, more noticeably this time. One by one, people began to lower themselves further, some bowing their heads completely, others stepping back as if distance alone could protect them from whatever was unfolding. Lily caught a whisper somewhere behind her. It is real. He chose her. Impossible. The words blurred together, but the meaning did not. Chose. Her stomach dropped. No, she said quickly, shaking her head harder now. No, you do not get to choose me. That was not the deal. She tried to pull her hand free. This time, his grip responded. Not tighter, not rough, just enough to remind her that she could not leave unless he allowed it. He stepped closer again, closing the remaining distance between them until there was nowhere left for her to go. You misunderstand, he said quietly. You placed yourself within my reach the moment you spoke. Lily's chest tightened. I was trying to survive, she shot back, her voice breaking through the fear. I did what I had to do. Something in his expression shifted again, subtle but real. He studied her now, not just looking, but assessing, as if weighing something unseen. And now you will continue to survive, he said, almost thoughtfully. Just not in the way you expected. The heat in her wrist surged once more, then steadied, settling into a low, constant presence that refused to be ignored. Lily swallowed hard, her thoughts scrambling to catch up. Then end it, she demanded, forcing the words out. Whatever this is, undo it. Silence followed. Not from the room, but from him. A pause that stretched just long enough to make her pulse spike again. If it could be undone so easily, he said at last, it would not exist. The finality in his tone hit harder than anything else. Around them, the last of the onlookers lowered their heads completely, as if the moment had reached a point of no return. Lily's breath trembled as the reality settled in, piece by piece, cold and undeniable. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not temporary. And as she stood there, her hand still held in his, the faint gold pattern beneath her skin glowing softly, she realized something far worse than fear. She had not escaped the life she was running from. She had stepped into something far more powerful. And this time, there was no walking away. The room did not move, but everything in Lily's world tilted. The golden pattern beneath her skin settled into place, no longer flickering, no longer forming, just there, permanent and undeniable. She stared at it, her breath uneven, her thoughts scrambling for something that could still make this reversible. There had to be something. There was always a way out. There had to be. You said words matter in your world, she said, forcing her voice to stay steady even as her pulse raced. Then listen carefully. I take it back. A few heads in the room lifted slightly at that. Not in defiance. In curiosity. As if they wanted to see what he would do. Lucien did not react immediately. He watched her, silent, still, as if measuring the weight of her words against something far older than either of them. You cannot take back a vow once it has been accepted, he said finally. His tone was calm, but there was no space in it for negotiation. Lily's chest tightened. It was not a vow. It was a mistake. Intent does not erase consequence, he replied. The words landed harder than she expected. Not loud. Not sharp. Just absolute. She shook her head again, more forceful this time. Then explain it to me, she demanded. Explain what I just got pulled into without even knowing it. A pause followed. Not long, but long enough that the room seemed to lean in with her. Lucien's gaze shifted briefly to the faint glow at her wrist, then back to her face. You invoked a binding claim in the presence of witnesses, he said. You named a husband. You pointed to me, and I chose to answer. Lily's stomach dropped further with each word. That still does not make it real, she argued, though her voice lacked the certainty it had before. It makes it witnessed, he corrected. And in my world, that is what gives it power. The murmurs in the room grew slightly, low and controlled, like distant thunder that never quite broke into a storm. Lily caught fragments again. Ancient law. He accepted publicly. It cannot be undone. She closed her eyes for a second, just 1 second, trying to breathe through the rising panic. This was too much. Too fast. Too final. When she opened them again, she forced herself to meet his gaze directly. Then why me? She asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. You could have denied it. You could have walked away. Why did you not? This time, the pause was different. Not hesitation. Consideration. Lucien stepped back half an inch, just enough to change the space between them, but not enough to break the connection entirely. His eyes studied her again, slower now, more deliberate. Because you did not choose me with strategy, he said. You chose me with instinct. Lily frowned slightly, confusion cutting through the fear. That does not make sense. It does where I come from, he replied. Most people calculate. They measure power. They avoid risk. You did none of that. His gaze flicked briefly to the crowd, then back to her. You saw a way out and reached for it, even if it meant stepping into something you did not understand. The words settled over her, unsettling in a different way now. Not just fear, recognition, because he was not entirely wrong. She had not thought. She had reacted. She had gambled everything on a single moment, and now she was paying for it. That still does not explain why you accepted, she said quietly. His expression shifted again, subtle but undeniable. Something colder, more guarded. Because once spoken, a claim like that does not disappear simply because it is inconvenient, he said. If I had refused, someone else in this room could have answered in my place. Lily's breath caught. She had not considered that. She had not even realized it was possible. Her eyes darted briefly around the room, suddenly aware of how many eyes were still on her, how many unknown intentions might have been waiting just beneath the surface. So you were saying this was, she hesitated, searching for the right word, protection? Lucien's gaze did not soften, but something in it shifted just enough to feel less distant. I am saying, he replied slowly, that the moment you spoke, you made yourself visible. The meaning settled in, heavy and immediate. Visible. Not just to him. To all of them. Lily swallowed hard, the reality pressing in tighter with every passing second. And now? She asked, her voice quieter than before. Now, he said, his tone steady, unchanging, you stand under my name. The words echoed in her mind, louder than anything else in the room. Under his name. Not beside. Not with. Under. Her fingers curled slightly at her sides, the faint glow at her wrist pulsing once in response, as if confirming what he had just said. Lily drew in a slow breath, her thoughts finally catching up to the truth she could no longer ignore. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not temporary. And whatever came next, she was no longer facing it alone, whether she wanted to or not. The weight of his words did not fade. It settled. Quiet. Heavy. Unavoidable. Lily stood still, her pulse no longer racing wildly but beating in a slow, uneasy rhythm, like her body was beginning to accept. Something her mind still resisted. Under his name. The phrase echoed again, sharper now, more defined. It was not protection in the way she understood it. It was not temporary shelter. It was something else. Something deeper. Something binding. She exhaled slowly, forcing her shoulders to lower, forcing herself to think instead of react. Panic would not help her now. Not here. Not surrounded by people who already seemed to know rules she had never even heard of. If I am under your name, she said carefully, choosing each word with more caution than before, then what does that actually mean for me? The question shifted the air again. Not dramatically, not visibly, but enough that the attention in the room sharpened. This was not just curiosity anymore. This was expectation. They were waiting for his answer. Lucien did not rush it. He let the silence stretch just long enough to remind everyone that he decided when things moved forward. Then he spoke. "It means," he said, his voice steady and low, "that no one here will touch what is mine." The wording made her breath catch, not because of fear alone, but because of how absolute it sounded. Not will try. Not will dare. Will not. A certainty, not a warning. Lily swallowed, her fingers curling slightly at her sides as the faint warmth at her wrist pulsed once, almost in agreement. "And what about me?" she asked, her voice quieter now, more controlled. "What do I have to do in return?" A flicker of something unreadable crossed his expression. Not irritation. Not surprise. Something closer to approval. As if she had finally asked the question that mattered. "You will stand," he said, "and you will not contradict the claim." Lily frowned slightly, confusion threading through the tension. "That is it. For now," he replied. The two words carried more weight than a longer answer ever could. For now. Temporary in wording, not an implication. Her gaze dropped briefly to her wrist again, the golden pattern now fully settled, no longer shifting but glowing faintly beneath her skin like a quiet reminder that something had already been decided. She lifted her head again, meeting his eyes with a steadiness she did not quite feel yet. "And later," she pressed. "Later," he said, "you will learn what it means to carry a name that was not meant for you." The statement was not cruel. It was not threatening. But it was not gentle either. It was truth. Unfiltered. The kind that did not bend to comfort. Lily held his gaze for a second longer, then nodded once. Not agreement. Not acceptance. Just acknowledgement that she had heard him. Around them, the tension began to shift again, but this time it moved outward instead of inward. The people in the room straightened slowly, some rising from their lowered positions, others stepping back as if the moment had reached its conclusion. But their eyes remained on her. Not dismissive. Not indifferent. Different. Measuring. Assessing. As if she had gone from invisible to something they could not ignore. Lily felt it immediately. The difference. The weight of attention that had not existed for her before. It was not warmth. It was not welcome. It was recognition. And it made her chest tighten in a way she could not explain. "They are looking at me differently," she said quietly, not taking her eyes off the room. "They are," Lucien confirmed. "Because you are different now." The simplicity of his answer made it harder to argue with. She exhaled slowly, her thoughts settling into something clearer, more focused. She could not undo this. Not right now. Maybe not ever. But she could choose how she stood in it. She straightened her posture slightly, lifting her chin just enough to meet the eyes that dared to hold hers. If she was going to be seen, then she would not look like she was about to break. The shift was small, almost invisible, but it was enough. Lucien noticed. Of course he did. "Good," he said quietly, the word meant only for her. Lily did not respond. She did not trust her voice yet. Instead, she let her gaze move once more across the room, taking in the unfamiliar faces, the controlled movements, the unspoken rules that seemed to bind everything together. This world was not hers. It never had been. But now, it was not entirely separate either. Her fingers brushed lightly against the mark on her wrist, the faint glow steady beneath her touch. A reminder. A warning. A promise. She had stepped into something powerful without understanding it. And now she would have to learn fast. Because in a world where words became reality, one wrong sentence could change everything. The shift did not. And when the room began to move again, it followed Lily like a shadow that refused to leave. Conversations resumed, but softer now, controlled, as if every word had to pass through an invisible filter before being spoken. No one approached her. No one dared to. Yet she could feel them. Watching. Measuring. Waiting. Lily kept her posture steady, her chin slightly lifted, even as the unfamiliar weight of it all pressed against her ribs. This was not her world, but it was watching her like it expected her to belong. "We are leaving," Lucien said beside her, his voice low but carrying effortlessly through the space around them. The effect was immediate. The path ahead of them cleared without hesitation. No hesitation. No resistance. Just silent obedience. Lily noticed it. Of course she did. Power did not need to be loud here. It simply existed, and everything else moved around it. She hesitated for half a second before stepping forward, her body instinctively aligning with his pace even if her mind had not caught up yet. The doors ahead opened before they reached them. No one touched them. They simply opened. The cool night air greeted her the moment she crossed the threshold, sharp and clean, cutting through the heavy atmosphere she had just left behind. Lily exhaled, her shoulders dropping slightly as the tension in her chest loosened just enough for her to breathe properly again. But the mark on her wrist did not fade. It pulsed once, quiet but present, as if reminding her that stepping outside did not mean stepping away. She stopped walking. Just for a second. Lucien did not. He took 2 more steps before pausing, turning back to her with that same measured stillness that made everything feel intentional. "You were thinking about running," he said. Not a question. Lily's lips pressed together briefly before she answered. "I am thinking about options," she corrected. His gaze held hers, unreadable, but there was something in it now. Not surprise. Recognition. "And?" he asked. Lily glanced past him, out into the open street, the quiet stretch of pavement that looked so normal, so unchanged, like none of this had happened at all. "And I am realizing I do not have many," she admitted. Saying it out loud made it more real, more solid. He studied her for a moment longer, then turned fully toward her, closing the small distance again. "You have one," he said. Lily frowned slightly. "Which is?" "Stay," he replied. The simplicity of it almost made her laugh. "Almost. That is not an option," she said quietly. "That is a decision you already made for me." "No," he said calmly. "It is the only path that does not end with you losing more than you already have." The words landed differently this time. Not as control, not as a command, as something closer to truth. Lily's fingers brushed against the mark again, the faint glow steady beneath her skin. She did not understand it. Not fully, but she understood enough to know it was not something she could ignore. "If I stay," she said slowly, "then I am stepping into your world completely." Yes. No hesitation. No attempt to soften it. Just truth. "And if I do not?" she pressed. A brief pause. Not long. Just enough to feel deliberate. "Then you step into it alone," he answered. The difference was subtle, but it was everything. Lily held his gaze, searching for something she could hold on to. Some sign that this was not as final as it felt. But all she found was certainty. Not cold. Not cruel. Just certain. She looked away first, her eyes drifting back to the quiet street, to the illusion of normal life just a few steps away. It felt distant now, like something she had already left behind without realizing it. Her breath slowed. Her thoughts settled. And then, slowly, she nodded. Not fully. Not with conviction. But enough. Enough to mean she understood what he was offering. Or what he was not. "Then I stay," she said, her voice steady despite everything inside her shifting. The words felt heavy the moment they left her mouth. Not because she regretted them, but because she knew they mattered. Here, words always mattered. Lucien watched her for a second longer, then gave a small, almost imperceptible nod in return. "Good," he said quietly. This time, when he turned to walk, Lily followed without hesitation. The space between them remained the same, but something else had changed. Not the world. Not the rules. Her. And as the night closed in around them, the faint glow at her wrist pulsed once more, steady and certain, as if marking the moment she stopped trying to escape and started stepping forward into whatever came next. The city did not change, but Lily felt like she had stepped into a version of it that no longer belonged to her. The streetlights stretched in long golden lines across the pavement. Cars passed in the distance, and somewhere far away a siren echoed, normal and distant, like a life she could no longer reach. She walked beside Lucien in silence, matching his pace without thinking, her senses sharper now, more aware of everything and yet unable to focus on any one thing for too long. The mark on her wrist pulsed again, not painful, but impossible to ignore, like a quiet signal reminding her that every step forward was taking her deeper into something she did not understand. A black car waited at the curb ahead. It had not been there a moment ago. Lily was sure of it. The door was already open. No driver stepped out. No one spoke. It was simply ready. She slowed slightly, her instincts pulling at her, whispering that this was another line. Another step she would not be able to undo. Lucien stopped beside the car and turned his head just enough to look at her. "You chose to stay," he said. Not a reminder. A confirmation. Lily glanced at the open door, then back at him. "I did," she answered quietly. "That choice continues," he replied. Her fingers curled slightly at her sides. Of course it did. Nothing here seemed to happen just once. Every moment carried forward. Every word echoed. She took a breath, steadying herself, then stepped closer to the car. The interior was dark but clean, the kind of silence that felt deliberate, like even sound was controlled here. She hesitated for half a second, then slid inside. The leather seat was cool beneath her, grounding in a way she did not expect. Lucien followed without a word, the door closing behind him with a soft, final sound that made something in her chest tighten. The car began to move almost immediately. No engine roar. No sudden motion. Just a smooth glide forward, like it had always been meant to go this way. Lily looked out the window, watching the city blur slightly as they passed through it, her reflection faint against the glass. She looked the same face, the same expression, but she did not feel the same, not even close. "Where are we going?" she asked after a moment, her voice steady but quieter than before. "Home," Lucien answered. The word landed differently than she expected. Not comforting, not warm, just certain. Lily turned her head slightly, studying him from the corner of her eye. "You're home," she clarified. "Yes." No hesitation, no attempt to reframe it. She let out a slow breath, her thoughts shifting again, adjusting, recalibrating. "And what happens when we get there?" she asked. This time, he did not answer immediately. His gaze remained forward, his posture unchanged, as if the question itself required no urgency. "You will see," he said finally. Lily almost laughed at that. "Almost. That is not very reassuring," she said. "It is not meant to be," he replied. The honesty caught her off guard. She looked away again, back to the window, her fingers brushing lightly over the mark on her wrist. It pulsed once more, steady and calm, as if it had settled into its place within her. "You said I would learn what it means to carry your name," she said after a moment. "When does that start?" "It already has," he answered. Lily frowned slightly, her gaze dropping again to the faint glow beneath her skin. Of course it had. From the moment she spoke. From the moment he accepted. There had been no pause. No delay. Just a shift she could not undo. The car turned smoothly onto a quieter road, the city lights thinning, the buildings growing taller and more distant. Lily felt it again. That subtle pull. Like she was being drawn somewhere specific, somewhere that had been waiting long before she arrived. "There is something you are not telling me," she said quietly. Not accusing. Not confrontational. Just certain. Lucien's gaze shifted then, finally turning toward her. Not fully. Just enough that she could feel it. "There are many things you do not know yet," he said. "That is not the same as not telling you." Lily held his gaze for a second longer, then nodded slowly. Fair. Not comforting, but fair. She leaned back slightly into the seat, her body finally beginning to register the exhaustion beneath the adrenaline, the weight of everything that had happened pressing in now that there was space to feel it. "Then tell me one thing," she said softly. "Something I need to understand before we get there." A pause followed. Longer this time. More deliberate. Lucien studied her again, as if deciding how much to give and how much to hold back. Then, finally, he spoke. "When we arrive," he said, his voice lower now, quieter but more defined, "you will not be seen as a guest." Lily's breath stilled. "Then what will I be?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. His gaze held hers, steady and unyielding. "You will be seen," he said, "as mine." The words settled into the silence between them, heavier than anything else he had said so far. Not loud, not forced, just absolute. Lily looked away first, her reflection staring back at her from the window, unfamiliar now in a way she could not explain. The mark on her wrist pulsed again, steady and certain, as if agreeing with him. And for the first time since this began, she realized something that made her breath catch in a completely different way. This was not just about surviving anymore. This was about becoming something she had never planned to be. The car slowed before Lily realized they had left the city behind. The lights had thinned into scattered glows, the roads quieter, wider, leading into a space that felt less like a destination and more like a boundary. Something shifted in the air. Subtle, almost invisible, but her body noticed before her mind could explain it. The mark on her wrist pulsed once, stronger than before, a quiet signal that they were crossing into something different. The car came to a smooth stop in front of a massive iron gate, tall enough to disappear into the darkness above. It was not decorated. It did not need to be. Power did not announce itself here. It simply stood, unmoving, unquestioned. Lily leaned slightly toward the window, her breath catching as the gates began to open on their own, slow and silent, like they had been waiting. No guard stepped forward. No voices called out. The space beyond revealed itself gradually. A long driveway stretched ahead, lined with stone pillars and dim lights that cast soft shadows across the ground. And at the end of it, the estate. It rose out of the darkness like something carved from the night itself. Tall, silent, watching. Lily felt it immediately. Not fear. Not exactly. Something deeper. Like the place itself was aware of her. Presence. The car moved forward again, carrying her closer with every second. She did not speak. She did not ask questions. For the first time, she understood that some answers were not given. They were experienced. The closer they got, the more details emerged. Wide steps leading to towering doors. Windows that reflected nothing but darkness. Stone that looked untouched by time. It was not just a home. It was a statement. The car came to a stop at the base of the steps. The engine fell silent, leaving only the faint sound of wind brushing against the structure around them. Lily did not move immediately. Her fingers pressed lightly against the seat, grounding herself for a moment longer before stepping into something she could not step back from. The door opened. Again, no one touched it. Lucien stepped out first, his movements as controlled and effortless as always. He did not look back right away. He did not need to. He knew she would follow. And she did. The moment her feet touched the ground, the mark on her wrist pulsed again, warmer this time, like it was responding to the place itself. Lily inhaled slowly, lifting her gaze to take in the full height of the estate before her. It felt different up close. Not just large. Not just powerful. Alive in a way she could not explain. "This is where you live," she said quietly, more to herself than to him. "This is where you will be seen," Lucien corrected. The distinction settled heavily in her chest. Seen. Not just present. Not just staying. Seen. The doors ahead began to open before they reached them, revealing a vast interior lit by soft, golden light that did not quite reach the edges of the space. Figures stood inside. Still. Waiting. Not many. But enough. Enough to make it clear this was not a private arrival. Lily slowed slightly, her instincts reacting again, warning her that this moment mattered more than the last. That how she stepped forward now would define something she did not yet understand. Lucien did not stop. He moved forward without hesitation, crossing the threshold like it belonged to him. Because it did. Lily followed, one step behind, her posture straight, her breathing steady, even as her pulse echoed in her ears. The moment she crossed into the hall, everything changed. The air felt heavier. Colder. Not uncomfortable. Just different. Every figure in the room shifted at once, their attention locking onto her with a precision that made her spine stiffen. No one spoke. No one moved forward. They simply watched. Assessed. Judged. Lily felt it all at once. The weight. The expectation. The question hanging unspoken in the air. Who is she? Her fingers brushed lightly against the mark again, the faint glow steady beneath her skin. She did not look down this time. She did not need to. She knew it was there. Lucien stopped in the center of the hall. The silence deepened. Then, slowly, he turned to face the room, his presence alone enough to command every eye without effort. "She stands under my name," he said. The words were simple, direct, but they carried through the entire space like something far greater than sound. A shift rippled through the room. Not resistance. Not acceptance. Something in between. Measured. Careful. Watching. Lily felt it press against her from all sides, testing, weighing, deciding. And for the first time since she stepped into this world, she understood something clearly. This was not where the story settled. This was where it truly began. The silence did not break after his words. It deepened. It settled over the room like something ancient, something that had witnessed countless moments like this and knew exactly how they ended. Lily stood where she was, aware of every eye still fixed on her, but this time she did not look away. She held her ground, not because she felt strong, but because she understood now that weakness would be seen, measured, and remembered. A figure stepped forward from the left side of the hall. Slow, controlled. A woman, tall, composed, her expression unreadable, but her gaze sharp enough to cut through the quiet tension. She stopped a few feet away, just outside the invisible boundary that seemed to exist around Lucien. "My lord," she said, her voice smooth, respectful, but not soft. You return with an unexpected declaration. The pause before the last words was deliberate, chosen. Lily felt it immediately. Not disrespect. Not quite. But not acceptance either. Lucien did not turn. It was not unexpected, he replied calmly. Only unannounced. The distinction was subtle. But it landed. The woman's gaze shifted to Lily then, studying her more closely now, as if trying to see beyond what was visible. She carries the mark, the woman said, her tone sharpening slightly. Yet no counsel was called. No witnesses beyond those in the outer hall. Lily's fingers twitched at her side, her awareness of the mark returning instantly, the faint glow beneath her skin pulsing once in response to the attention. Lucien finally turned his head slightly, just enough to acknowledge the question without fully shifting his stance. The claim was made, he said, and it was answered. A murmur moved through the room again, quieter than before but heavier, like the weight of unspoken rules pressing against the surface. The woman's expression did not change, but her eyes narrowed just enough to reveal thought. Calculation. Then the law binds, she said slowly. Not a question, a recognition. It does, Lucien confirmed. Lily felt the shift again. Subtle, but real. Something in the room settled. Not into comfort, into acknowledgement. Whatever doubt had existed before, it no longer mattered. The rules had been invoked. And here, rules did not bend. The woman inclined her head slightly, not fully bowing, but offering the smallest sign of acceptance. Then she will require guidance, she said. She does not understand what she stands within. Lily's jaw tightened slightly at that. She did not interrupt. But she did not look away either. She met the woman's gaze directly, steady, unflinching. The woman noticed. Of course she did. Something flickered in her expression. Not approval. Not yet. But something had shifted. She will learn, Lucien said. The finality in his voice left no room for further debate. The woman nodded once, stepping back into place, her role in this moment complete. The attention in the room began to ease, just slightly. The tension no longer at its peak, but still present, still watching. Lily exhaled slowly, her body finally releasing a fraction of the pressure it had been holding. But not all of it. Not yet. That was not a welcome, she said quietly, her voice low enough that only he could hear. It was not meant to be, Lucien replied. She let out a small breath, something close to a humorless laugh. I noticed. His gaze shifted to her again, more direct this time. Respect here is not given because it is expected, he said. It is given because it is proven. The words settled into her thoughts immediately, clear and sharp. Not comforting, but understandable. Lily nodded slowly, her fingers brushing once more against the mark on her wrist. It pulsed again, steady and calm, as if grounding her in place. Then I guess I have work to do, she said quietly. Lucien watched her for a moment longer, something unreadable passing through his expression before it settled back into that same controlled calm. You have already begun, he said. Lily glanced around the room one more time, taking in the figures, the space, the quiet power that filled every corner. This was not a place where she could hide, not a place where she could pretend to be something she was not. Every movement would be seen. Every word would matter. Her gaze returned to him, steadier now than it had been before. Then show me where I stand, she said. For a second, the silence returned. Not heavy, not tense, just present. Then Lucien turned, stepping forward into the deeper part of the estate without looking back. And this time, Lily did not hesitate at all before following. The corridor stretched far beyond what Lily expected, lined with tall windows that revealed nothing but darkness outside and walls that seemed to absorb sound rather than reflect it. Each step she took echoed softly, but the sound faded almost instantly, as if the estate itself refused to let anything linger too long. Lucien walked ahead without slowing, his presence guiding the path without needing to explain it. Lily followed closely, her senses sharper now, catching every subtle shift in light, every faint movement in the distance. This place was not empty. It was watching. They reached a set of double doors at the end of the corridor, taller than any she had seen before, carved with patterns she could not fully understand but somehow felt familiar. Lucien stopped, resting his hand briefly against the surface. The doors opened immediately, silent and precise. The room beyond was vast, but not overwhelming. It was controlled, intentional, a space that did not need to prove anything because it already knew its place in the world. A single large window stood at the far end, revealing the distant outline of the city far below, its lights small and distant, like something she had already outgrown without realizing it. Lily stepped inside slowly, her gaze moving across the room, taking in the details. A long table, shelves lined with objects that looked older than anything she had ever seen. And in the center, a raised platform with a single chair that was not just a chair. It was a statement. She stopped a few feet inside, her body instinctively recognizing that she had reached something important. Lucien stepped past her, moving toward the center of the room before turning to face her fully. For the first time since she met him, the space between them felt deliberate. Not distance. Position. This is where decisions are made, he said. His voice carried differently here, deeper, more defined, as if the room itself shaped it. Lily's eyes moved from him to the chair, then back again. And where do I stand in that? She asked quietly. The question lingered, heavier than the others she had asked before. Not because she was unsure, but because she was ready to hear the answer. Lucien studied her for a moment, his gaze steady, unchanging. Then he stepped aside, just slightly, opening the space between them in the center of the room. Step forward, he said. Lily hesitated. Just for a second. Not from fear. From understanding. This was another line. Another choice. One that would not be undone. Her fingers brushed against the mark on her wrist, the faint glow steady beneath her skin, almost warm now, like it was waiting. She inhaled slowly, then stepped forward. One step, then another. The air shifted as she moved, subtle but undeniable, like the room itself was reacting to her presence. When she reached the center, the mark on her wrist pulsed sharply, stronger than before, sending a quiet wave of warmth through her arm. She stopped, her breath catching slightly as the sensation settled. Lucien watched her closely, not interfering, not guiding, just observing. Do you feel it? He asked. Lily nodded slowly. Yes. Good, he said. That means it has accepted you. The words sent a quiet chill through her, not from fear, but from the weight of what they implied. Accepted. Not tolerated. Not ignored. Accepted. She looked around again, seeing the room differently now, as if something had shifted just beneath the surface. So what happens now? She asked. Lucien stepped forward again, closing the distance just enough to stand beside her, not in front, not behind. Beside. Now, he said, his voice lower, steadier, you begin to understand what it means to carry more than your own name. Lily's breath slowed, her thoughts settling into something clearer, more focused. She was no longer reacting. She was choosing. Slowly, carefully, but choosing. Her gaze moved back to the window, to the distant city lights far below, the life she had left behind without realizing it would not be waiting when she returned. If she ever returned. Her fingers curled slightly, the mark pulsing once more in response. She did not look down this time. She did not need to. She understood now. This was not a mistake she could fix. Not a moment she could escape. This was a path, and she was already on it. Lily straightened slightly, her shoulders steady, her voice calm when she spoke again. Then teach me, she said. The words settled into the room, quiet but clear. Lucien watched her, something unreadable passing through his gaze before it stilled once more. Then, slowly he inclined his head. Not a command, not a claim, something else. Recognition. And as the silence closed in around them again, deeper and more certain than before, one truth settled quietly into place. She had asked for a lie, but what she was given was a future she could not yet see.